The galaxy was vast, a collection of star systems where the strongest civilizations reigned supreme. Humanity, however, was an unknown quantity, relegated to a small corner of the cosmos. A species once thought to be primitive and fragile, their ancient wars, struggles for survival, and scientific marvels had long been forgotten in the grand scheme of galactic history. They were considered weak, a footnote among the advanced civilizations that filled the stars. But no one told the human race that. On a distant world, a meeting took place, a summit between some of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. They were leaders from the Zardoth Coalition, the Tricast Alliance, and the First Ascendants. They spoke of their dominance, their technological superiority, and their unyielding reign over their territories. Their vast fleets of warships patrolled every corner of the galaxy, and the idea of a challenge to their might was laughable. And then came the message. A single human envoy, a representative from Earth, had managed to slip through the heavily guarded sectors and deliver a broadcast directly to the galactic leaders. It was a bold move, one considered suicidal by many. The message was simple, though it shocked the galaxy to its core. Humanity is not what you think. And we're coming for you. The leaders of the galactic empires laughed at first, dismissing it as a joke. Who would dare to challenge them? What could a primitive species possibly do to harm their might? But the truth was soon revealed. Humanity had discovered something the galaxy had long forgotten, the ability to fight back against insurmountable odds. Humanity's first major advantage lay in their resourcefulness. Despite being outmatched in terms of sheer numbers and technology, humans had a way of overcoming adversity through sheer willpower and invention. Their quick adaptability and ingenuity had always been their greatest strength. The ancient myths of Earth's history, tales of underdogs overcoming unbeatable foes, were not just stories. They were blueprints for survival. As the empires of the galaxy ignored the threat, humanity moved swiftly, forging alliances with the few species that still valued freedom and life outside the cold logic of galactic dominance. The first true test came on the border of the Tricast Alliance's territory, a remote region where the human fleet made its first strike. The odds were overwhelmingly stacked against them. The Tricast had one of the most formidable fleets in existence, and humanity's ragtag coalition was vastly outnumbered. But humanity's fleet, though small, possessed one trait that the galactic powers had underestimated: a fierce determination. Human ships were built for adaptability, equipped with experimental technology that allowed them to outmaneuver far superior fleets. When the battle began, it was clear that this would not be an easy victory for the Tricast. They could not predict the tactics of the humans, whose ships weaved through the stars in ways no one had anticipated. The first battle was a resounding success. Humanity's fleet did not just survive, they won. The Tricast had been forced to retreat, their pride wounded, their confidence shaken. The victory sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The message was clear: humanity, the so-called underdogs, had just defeated one of the most powerful military forces in the known universe. The galactic empires tried to spin the defeat as a fluke, a simple matter of strategy or luck. But deep down, they knew that the humans were no longer to be ignored. The age of their dominance was over. For the first time in centuries, a new threat had emerged from the unknown, one that wasn't bound by the rules of the powerful. The underdogs were fighting back, and they were winning. News of the victory spread quickly, and the previously scattered and weak human resistance across the galaxy began to coalesce into a force greater than anyone had imagined. The first seeds of rebellion had been sown, and the leaders of the galaxy realized that their underestimation of humanity would be their undoing. The war was just beginning, and humanity had no intention of losing. In the wake of humanity's first unexpected victory, the galaxy trembled. The underdogs, the ones who had long been seen as weak and insignificant, had struck a powerful blow against the Tricast Alliance. The leaders of the galaxy were in disarray. Some demanded a swift and overwhelming retaliation, while others feared that a drawn-out war with the humans would cost them dearly. The true power of humanity had been revealed, but the question remained: how had they done it? For centuries, humanity's technology had been mocked. They were known for their crude ships, their lack of advanced weaponry, and their tendency to rely on outdated strategies. Yet, they had managed to defeat the seemingly invincible TriCast fleet. What was their secret? It was not luck or sheer force, it was something else entirely. Humanity's strength lay not just in their resourcefulness, but in their ability to think in ways the galaxy's empires could not comprehend. They had discovered something that the galactic powers had long forgotten: the power of unity. The human resistance wasn't just a few ships scattered across the galaxy, it was an entire civilization banding together with a singular purpose. They could adapt, improvise, and overcome because every human, from the lowest grunt to the highest general, had one thing in common: the will to survive. However, there was more to humanity's newfound strength than just unity. While the galaxy's powers had relied on massive fleets and overwhelming firepower, humanity had focused on something different, a weapon that no one had ever considered. It was not a weapon of destruction, but one of disruption. The humans had developed a technology that could hack, disable, and even control the enemy's systems. It was a digital warfare tool unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The weapon was called the Sci-Fi protocol, a sophisticated AI-driven system capable of infiltrating the most advanced technology. It could disable enemy weapons, scramble communication networks, and even take control of enemy ships without ever firing a shot. This weapon was what had turned the tide in the battle against the TriCast. The humans had rendered their advanced fleet helpless, their once unstoppable war machines reduced to floating husks. The Sci-Fi protocol was still in its early stages, but it had proven its potential. It could only be deployed in limited circumstances, but its success was undeniable. And the humans knew that it was the key to their future victories. They could no longer fight the empires of the galaxy on the same terms, they had to fight smarter. As humanity's forces began to regroup and reorganize, the galaxy's empires took notice. The TriCast, humiliated and stunned, regrouped and began to send out waves of scouts and spies to uncover the secrets of humanity's mysterious weapon. They could not afford to let the humans gain another advantage. But humanity was already one step ahead. The Sci-Fi protocol was not just a tool for warfare, it was part of a larger strategy. The humans had built a network of underground factions, secret resistance cells scattered throughout the galaxy, all of them working toward the same goal. They had even begun infiltrating the empires themselves, planting operatives within the highest echelons of power. The Sci-Fi protocol was not just a weapon of war, it was a weapon of infiltration, of subversion. The humans had begun to turn the very systems that the empires relied upon against them. It was a subtle, insidious form of warfare, one that would chip away at the empire's power from within. And yet, the galaxy's leaders refused to acknowledge the true extent of the threat. They were too focused on conventional methods of war, fleets, armies, and firepower. They couldn't understand that humanity's greatest strength was its unpredictability, its willingness to fight in ways that no one could anticipate. As the months passed, the humans continued to grow stronger. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for the future of the galaxy itself. The empires had underestimated them before, but now they would learn the hard way: humanity could no longer be ignored. The first wave of human resistance fighters began to rally on a remote planet near the outer rim. It was a small world, barely known by the galactic powers, but it would become a symbol of humanity's resilience. The Sci-Fi protocol would be put to the test once again, as a new conflict loomed on the horizon. The empires would soon learn that the underdogs had more tricks up their sleeves than anyone could have imagined. As the Sci-Fi protocol continued to gain traction, humanity's resistance forces flourished. What had once been a scattered, desperate group of rebels was now becoming a coordinated and powerful force that stretched across the galaxy. Small victories began to snowball, and every world that joined humanity's fight added its own unique strength to the cause. But there was one planet, one symbol of humanity's defiance, that would stand as the turning point in the war, a planet called New Terra. New Terra was an unassuming world on the outermost edge of known space, one that had been largely forgotten by the galactic empires. It had once been a thriving human colony, but after decades of neglect, it had become a place of exile for the most radical and rebellious humans who had grown disillusioned with the status quo. Yet, despite the lack of support from the wider galaxy, New Terra had become the center of the rebellion. It was here that humanity's first real strike against the empires would take place. The first step in this bold operation was the gathering of forces. All across the galaxy, human cells and factions began to coordinate, using the Cipher protocol to encrypt their communications and hide their movements. Rebel leaders and strategists gathered in secret, forming a plan that would send shockwaves through the entire galaxy. The plan was simple, but dangerous. They would take the fight to the heart of the enemy, disrupting the Empire's core power structures. The target was the First Ascendant, one of the most feared and powerful empires in the galaxy. The Ascendants had long been known for their ruthlessness and their ability to control entire sectors with their fleet of elite warships and powerful orbital stations. Their reputation alone had kept most species in check, but now, humanity intended to bring it all crashing down. The operation, codenamed Crimson Dawn, would involve an all-out assault on the Ascendant homeworld, a heavily fortified planet called Irinder. The human fleet, though still vastly outnumbered, had an advantage. They knew how to strike where it hurt. They would not face the Ascendant's military might head-on. Instead, the rebels would infiltrate the core systems, disabling the planet's defenses, and sabotage its infrastructure before the main assault even began. The Cipher protocol would be the key to this mission. The humans had infiltrated Ascendant networks months in advance, planting deep-cover operatives within the planet's infrastructure. Their task was to trigger a series of cascading failures that would cripple Irinder's defenses long before the first human ship arrived. On the eve of the operation, as the fleet gathered in orbit above New Terra, the mood was one of quiet determination. The rebel forces were ready to make their move, but they knew the risks. The Ascendants would not go down without a fight. Every human in the fleet understood the stakes. If they succeeded, they would deal a crushing blow to one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. If they failed, it would be a disaster that could set humanity back by decades. The operation began with a series of covert strikes on Ascendant supply lines. These early attacks were designed to draw attention away from New Terra, allowing the human fleet to slip past the Empire's outer defenses and reach Irinder. As the human ships slipped into the heart of Ascendant territory, their cloaking technology made them virtually invisible. The Cipher protocol ensured that every human ship could hack into and disable Ascendant radar and communication systems, ensuring their movements remained undetected. But the Ascendants were not fools. They quickly detected irregularities in their systems, and their response was swift. By the time the human fleet reached the outskirts of Irinder, a full-scale fleet had been deployed to intercept them. The battle that ensued was nothing short of chaotic. Ascendant warships, sleek and advanced, clashed with the human ships, which were rugged but equipped with the revolutionary tactics that had already won them previous victories. In the midst of the fighting, the humans executed the second phase of their plan. The operatives who had infiltrated Irinder's systems triggered a series of catastrophic events. Military supply depots exploded in a chain reaction, power grids failed, and the planet's orbital defenses began to malfunction. The Ascendants were caught off guard, their superiority rendered irrelevant by the sudden disruption. The final blow came when a human sabotage team breached the Central Command Center on Irinder. Using the Cipher protocol, they bypassed security systems and planted a virus that would take control of the Ascendant leadership's communication network. The virus allowed the human resistance to broadcast a message to every corner of the planet, revealing to the citizens of Irinder the true nature of their empire, its cruelty, its corruption, and its greed. The Ascendant leaders scrambled to regain control, but the damage had been done. Irinder's population, previously loyal to their rulers, began to rise up in anger. The rebellion on the homeworld began as a series of riots but quickly escalated into full-scale insurrection. In the chaos that followed, the human fleet was able to make a decisive strike, breaking through the remaining defense lines and forcing the Ascendant military into retreat. For the first time in the war, humanity had struck at the heart of one of the galaxy's most powerful empires. The Ascendants had been brought to their knees, not by superior firepower or overwhelming numbers, but by the ingenuity, unity, and strategic brilliance of the human rebels. The war had changed forever. The rise of humanity as a galactic force was no longer a mere possibility, it was an undeniable reality. The shockwaves of humanity's bold strike against the First Ascendant reverberated across the galaxy. News of their success spread like wildfire, igniting a wave of fear and admiration in equal measure. The once dismissed underdogs had just dealt a crushing blow to one of the most powerful empires in existence. No longer could the galactic leaders ignore the human threat. The First Ascendant, still reeling from their defeat on Erinder, issued a public declaration of war, calling for the full might of their fleet to be brought to bear against humanity. The Ascendant Council, composed of the elite aristocrats who had ruled the Empire for centuries, had underestimated humanity's resilience and resourcefulness. They now realized that their empire's survival depended on putting down the uprising before it spread further. The hunt for the human resistance was on. But the galaxy's reaction was not one of unanimous support for the Ascendants. The blow to Erinder sparked a wave of doubt in the minds of the other galactic powers. The Zardoth coalition, once a staunch ally of the First Ascendant, began to distance themselves. The Zardoth had always maintained a fragile alliance with the Ascendants, but recent diplomatic tensions and the growing human insurgency had caused fractures in that relationship. The Zardoth began to quietly withdraw from the conflict, their fleets pulling back to the edges of their territory. Meanwhile, the Tricast Alliance, having suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of humanity only months earlier, watched the unfolding events with a mixture of dread and begrudging respect. They had seen humanity's potential firsthand, and their previous decision to underestimate the humans seemed like a critical miscalculation. For the Tricast, however, the idea of an alliance with humanity was out of the question. They were too proud, too stubborn to align with a species they had once seen as inferior. Instead, they focused on strengthening their own borders, preparing for the inevitable escalation of war. Humanity's victory on Erinder had struck a chord with many oppressed species across the galaxy. Civilizations long subjugated by the Empire's tyranny began to see the humans not as invaders, but as liberators. Rebel movements sprang up on planets once thought to be too loyal to the Ascendant cause. The rise of humanity as a symbol of defiance sent ripples through the galaxy, inspiring hope in the hearts of those who had long been silenced by fear. On New Terra, the heart of the human rebellion, a tense council was convened. The leaders of humanity's resistance gathered to discuss the next steps in their struggle. The successes of Crimson Dawn had given them a sense of purpose, but also the knowledge that the war was far from over. The First Ascendant would not simply roll over after their humiliation. The humans needed to plan their next move carefully, and they needed to continue their alliance-building efforts, securing the support of other species before the Ascendant retaliation began in earnest. The Council's discussions were focused on a single question: how could humanity take advantage of the growing unrest among the galactic empires without overextending themselves? Their newfound victories had gained them allies, but they could not afford to alienate potential supporters with reckless actions. It was during this council meeting that a surprising proposal came forward from the human strategist General Alara Reyes. She had been one of the key figures in the success of Crimson Dawn and had built her reputation on being a pragmatic thinker, one who understood the limitations of humanity's current position. Her idea was radical, but it had the potential to shift the course of the war entirely. Reyes proposed that humanity take a page from the playbook of ancient Earth insurgencies, an unconventional strategy of indirect warfare designed to cripple the enemy's ability to fight back. Instead of focusing on large-scale battles, which humanity would undoubtedly lose against the combined fleets of the galactic empires, they would strike at the empire's vulnerabilities, using sabotage, economic warfare, and psychological tactics to destabilize their opponents. Her plan was called the Veil of the Forgotten. The core idea was to create a series of shockwaves across the galaxy, attacks on trade routes, crippling strikes on resource production facilities, and the release of highly contagious viruses to disrupt military manufacturing. The goal was not to win through force, but to force the empires to fight a war on multiple fronts, spreading their resources thin and creating confusion in their ranks. It was a war of attrition, one that played to humanity's strengths in resilience and adaptability. But there was a danger. The more humanity weakened the empires, the more desperate they would become. The galactic powers, realizing they were losing their grip, would likely respond with increasingly brutal measures. Humanity would have to tread carefully, or risk provoking a full-scale extermination effort. Despite these risks, the Council was intrigued by Reyes's vision. They understood that humanity could not afford to keep fighting like the empires did, with conventional battles and overwhelming force. The fight would need to be asymmetric, targeting the weaknesses the empires had ignored for so long. As the Council began to move forward with Reyes's plan, a small group of rebels, led by a charismatic former diplomat named Amira Callis, began to make waves in a different part of the galaxy. Callis, a former member of the Zardoth Coalition's diplomatic corps, had defected to the human cause and had since gained significant influence among other oppressed species. Callis's plan was even more daring, to directly confront the galactic leaders, sowing discord and turning their former allies against them. With the First Ascendant's retaliation looming, humanity had to be careful about who they trusted and who they allied with. Yet, with each passing day, the stakes grew higher, and the need for decisive action more urgent. The war was no longer just about survival, it was about reshaping the galaxy itself. The battle for the stars had begun in earnest, and humanity was no longer the underdog. They were becoming a force that could not be ignored. The question remained, would they continue to outsmart their enemies, or would the galaxy's powers unite to crush the rebellion once and for all? Only time would tell. The galaxy was on the edge of chaos. Humanity's steady progress, marked by bold strikes against the First Ascendant and their newfound alliances with oppressed species, had turned the tide of war. But the Empire, bruised and enraged, had begun to fight back with terrifying ferocity. The ripple effect of humanity's successes was felt across every corner of the galaxy, and the tension in the air was palpable. The First Ascendant was no longer merely a political entity, it was a wounded animal lashing out, willing to destroy anything in its path to regain control. The first signs of the retaliation came swiftly. Ascendant fleets began to target civilian populations on human-aligned worlds. Their tactics were brutal, their weapons indiscriminate. Entire cities were wiped out in orbital bombardments, and the survivors were either enslaved or imprisoned in labor camps. The Ascendant leadership had decreed that no mercy would be shown, not to humans, not to their allies. But humanity was not intimidated. In fact, it only fueled their resolve. The atrocities committed by the First Ascendant rallied more and more species to the human cause. The Zardoth Coalition, once a shaky ally, began to rethink their position. Although their pride kept them from formal alliances with the humans, they secretly provided intelligence and logistical support to rebel forces, all the while maintaining the appearance of neutrality. Yet, the more humanity struck at the Empire's supply lines, the more desperate the Ascendants became. They started using even more terrifying measures, pushing the limits of their technological capabilities. New weapons were deployed, hyper-advanced neural disruption bombs capable of incapacitating entire populations with a single blast, and kinetic weapons that tore through planetary atmospheres, rendering entire ecosystems uninhabitable. The galaxy had never witnessed such destruction. It was during this escalation that General Alara Reyes, now one of humanity's most trusted leaders, unveiled the next phase of the rebellion strategy, the Phoenix Initiative. It was a daring plan to force the First Ascendant to the negotiating table, one that would require everything humanity had learned in the war so far, and more. The Phoenix Initiative was twofold. The first part involved a full-scale offensive against the Ascendant's key military strongholds, including their primary shipyards and defense factories. The idea was to cripple the Empire's ability to build more warships and to disrupt their ability to continue their war machine. It was a risky proposition. The Ascendant fleets would undoubtedly be there to defend these strongholds, and humanity's forces would be vastly outnumbered. But General Reyes believed it was a necessary risk. The second part of the plan was even more dangerous. Humanity would launch a high-stakes diplomatic mission to the heart of Ascendant space. A small, elite group of humans, led by former diplomat Amira Callis, would attempt to negotiate with the Ascendant leadership directly. The goal was to secure a ceasefire, or, at the very least, buy enough time for humanity to complete the military operations. It was a gamble. The Ascendants might see this as an opportunity to crush humanity once and for all, or they might believe that negotiating with the Underdogs was a lesser evil than continuing the war. The military assault began first. Humanity's ships, once small and fragmented, had grown stronger and more organized. Their fleet, though still outnumbered, was a force to be reckoned with. It moved swiftly, launching precision strikes against key ascendant targets. The human fleet's success in these early operations was largely due to their use of advanced tactics that had been developed over months of warfare, guerrilla-style tactics, ambushes, and the now infamous Cipher protocol, which allowed human ships to hack into and disable enemy systems at will. The first ascendant, caught off guard by the scale and speed of the assault, was forced to divert large portions of their fleet to defend their critical installations. But they were not without resources. The ascendant military responded with an overwhelming counteroffensive, dispatching their most advanced warships to crush the rebellion. The battle was fierce, the stakes higher than ever before. Humanity's fleet faced its most deadly opponents yet. The decisive moment came when a human warship, the U.S. Leviathan, breached the heart of the Ascendant fleet's defenses. This was the flagship of the human resistance, a symbol of their defiance and ingenuity. Its mission, to strike at the Ascendant shipyards orbiting the gas giant of Dayrath, the key facility that supplied the Empire with its warships. A successful strike here would cripple the Ascendant's ability to wage war for months, perhaps even years. The battle around Dayrath was brutal. Ascendant warships outnumbered humanity's forces by more than 5-1. But the humans fought with a relentless determination that caught their enemies off guard. The Leviathan, under the command of Captain Jax Rayner, led the charge, using advanced subspace drives to perform impossible maneuvers and delivering devastating blows to the Ascendant ships. The battle raged for hours, with explosions lighting up the sky and debris raining down across the battlefield. Then, in a moment of desperate brilliance, Captain Rayner ordered a final, suicidal maneuver, a coordinated strike that sent the Leviathan directly into the heart of the Ascendant shipyard central reactor. The explosion, magnified by the gas giant's intense gravity, sent shockwaves across the entire system, causing a chain reaction that crippled the Ascendant's ability to build new warships. The battle was won, but at a heavy cost. The news of the destruction of the Dayrath shipyard spread quickly. The first Ascendant was stunned, their war effort severely crippled. Yet, as the Empire reeled from this catastrophic loss, they were forced to face the reality of their situation. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. In the aftermath of the military strike, Amira Callis and her diplomatic team were sent to negotiate with the Ascendant leadership. It was their last hope for peace, or at least a chance to buy time. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Humanity had reached its tipping point. The future of the galaxy was no longer in the hands of the empires. It was in the hands of the Underdogs. The galaxy held its breath as Amira Callis and her diplomatic team made their way toward the heart of Ascendant space, a dangerous journey to the planet of Dithrion, the capital of the First Ascendant. With the devastating loss of the Dayrath shipyards, the Ascendant Empire was on the brink of collapse. Yet, their pride and hatred toward humanity still burned strong, and the negotiations would not be easy. As the diplomatic delegation approached Dithrion, every member of the crew understood the immense risks. The possibility of a ceasefire or peace was slim, but this was humanity's chance to secure its survival. The Ascendant leadership, reeling from their military defeat, had no choice but to respond. They were divided. Some of the council members pushed for total annihilation, a final strike to erase humanity once and for all, while others, more pragmatic, saw negotiation as the only way to preserve what was left of their empire. For the first time in a long time, the First Ascendant's power structure was uncertain. The empire, once so unified in its oppressive rule, was fractured, and this could be humanity's greatest opportunity. Callis knew that the Ascendants would demand terms that were humiliating. After all, it was rare for any race to challenge the Empire and emerge victorious. But she also knew that a drawn-out war could cost humanity everything. They were running low on resources, and though their forces had grown in strength, they could not maintain the fight indefinitely. The Phoenix Initiative had bought them time, but time was running out. The human resistance had to win this negotiation, one way or another. Upon arriving at Dithrion, the diplomatic team was ushered into the heart of the Ascendant Council, a vast, cavernous hall that exuded power. At the center of the chamber sat the Triumvirate, the three leaders who ruled the First Ascendant, High Regent Amon Duthur, Commander General Ilska Vir, and the mysterious figure known only as the Unseen Hand. The Unseen Hand was a shadowy figure, a rumored puppet master behind the Ascendant war machine, whose presence sent chills down the spines of even the most powerful individuals. The trio was united by one thing: their arrogance in the face of humanity's defiance. Callus stood tall before them, her voice calm and confident despite the immense pressure. "We did not come here to beg for mercy," she began. "We came to offer you a choice, a chance to end this war before it consumes everything. We do not seek your destruction, but we will not stand idly by while you destroy our worlds and our people." For a moment, the room was silent. Regent Duthur leaned forward, his cold, calculating gaze fixed on Callus. "Your people are nothing but insects, and you dare speak of peace?" His voice was like ice, harsh and filled with disdain. "You have struck at our heart, destroyed our shipyards, and humiliated us in front of the galaxy. There will be no peace unless it is on our terms." Callus didn't flinch. "Your empire is dying, Regent. You know it. The galaxy sees it. The First Ascendant has lost its power. You've spent decades conquering worlds, but now it is your empire that is being torn apart. Humanity has proven we are not your slaves. We fight not just for survival, but for the future of the galaxy. This war has brought nothing but suffering. The question is, how much more must be spilled before you realize that?" Commander General Vir, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. "You misunderstand, human. This isn't about pride or vengeance. This is about survival for the First Ascendant. We will not yield to you. You have awakened something in us, something that cannot be forgotten. We will take everything from you if we must." Callus's heart sank. Vir's words made it clear that negotiations were not going to be easy. But she couldn't afford to lose her composure. "You are wrong. It's not just the Ascendant Empire that is at risk. It's the entire galaxy. The humans have united, and we're not the only ones. There are millions of species oppressed by your rule, and they've seen what we can do. Your defeat would not mean peace, it would mean a galaxy in chaos, as every race takes up arms against you. Your empire is crumbling from within. We offer you a way out, peace, or the destruction of everything you've built." The Unseen Hand finally spoke, its voice echoing in the vast chamber. "Enough, all of you. We will not allow ourselves to be led by these pests." It turned toward Callus, and the room seemed to darken with its presence. "You offer peace, but we will not be cowed by your words. If we are to surrender, you will kneel before us and accept your place in the galaxy. Only then will we consider your peace." Callus's mind raced. The Unseen Hand's offer was clear: total submission or annihilation. But she couldn't give in. This was humanity's chance to secure freedom, and she could not, would not, let it slip away. She glanced at her team, their faces set with resolve. She had to do something that would break this deadlock. She turned back to the Triumvirate. "Your empire is fractured. You do not need to destroy us. We can help you rebuild the galaxy, but only if you acknowledge the truth. The galaxy has changed. Your power can be wielded for something greater than subjugation. You are not invincible. Humanity will never bend to you." For a moment, a tense silence hung in the air, broken only by the murmurs of the Ascendant Council. The tension reached its peak as the Triumvirate exchanged glances. Then, unexpectedly, the Unseen Hand gestured to Duthur and Vir, signaling a pause in the conversation. "We shall consider your words," Duthur said slowly. "But know this, the First Ascendant does not bend. It breaks. If peace is what you seek, you will need to prove that you can match us, not just in battle, but in the strength of your resolve." Callus's pulse quickened. This was the opening humanity needed. She couldn't allow them to underestimate humanity's resolve. "We will show you our strength," she said, her voice unwavering. "But it will be on our terms." The negotiations were far from over, but humanity had crossed a line. The first ascendant had not destroyed them as they had once intended. The tables had turned. The underdogs had won a victory, one that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The question now was whether peace would come, or whether the galaxy would be plunged into an even greater war. For humanity, the fight was no longer just for survival, it was for a future where the stars no longer belonged to the empires of old, but to those brave enough to change the course of history. The next move would decide everything. The tense atmosphere of Dithrion was thick with anticipation as the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The Ascendant leadership, still reeling from their previous defeats and divided over how to handle humanity, had not yet come to a conclusion. Callus and her team were given no guarantees, but one thing was clear: humanity was no longer an insignificant force in the galaxy. They had earned their place at the negotiating table, and now the question was whether the first Ascendant would embrace the possibility of peace, or destroy them all. Callus knew that the next few days would be crucial. Every moment she spent within the heart of Ascendant space brought them closer to the tipping point. While she played the diplomatic game, General Alara Reyes was coordinating the final stages of the Phoenix Initiative. The rebellion had taken advantage of the disarray caused by the Dayrath shipyard destruction, and with the Ascendant fleet in disarray, humanity and their allies were pressing their advantage across multiple fronts. Back on New Terra, the human homeworld, celebrations erupted across the rebel strongholds. Humanity had achieved what had once seemed impossible: they had dealt a decisive blow to the Ascendant war machine. The galaxy's underdogs had risen, and they had shown the Empire that their power was no longer absolute. But even as the victories piled up, there was no time to rest. Humanity's struggle for survival was not yet over, and the Ascendants had yet to decide whether they would seek peace or total annihilation. The next day, a private meeting was arranged between Callus and the three leaders of the First Ascendant. The chamber where they gathered was immense, its walls adorned with towering holograms of the Ascendant fleet. Despite the outward grandeur, there was a palpable sense of tension in the air. Callus stood in the center of the room, flanked by her closest allies, as the triumvirate of the Ascendants entered. Regent Duthar took his seat first, his cold eyes fixed on Callus as he spoke. "You have proven your resilience, human. But do not mistake our tolerance for weakness. We will not surrender our dominion over the galaxy. The war is not over." Callus met his gaze without flinching. "I never asked for your submission. But you've seen what we're capable of. We fought alongside the oppressed species of this galaxy, and we've shown that even the mightiest empire can be challenged. Peace, Regent, is the only path forward. If you continue this war, there will be no winners. Only destruction. Your empire, your people, will fall, and there will be nothing left but the ashes of your pride." Commander General Veer leaned forward, her sharp eyes narrowing. "You dare speak of peace? You think you've won? You have merely delayed the inevitable. The Ascendant Empire does not bend to threats or demands." Callus's voice was steady, but filled with the weight of everything humanity had fought for. "I'm not threatening you, General. I'm offering you a choice. The galaxy does not belong to one race anymore, if it ever did. We're not asking you to abandon your power, we're asking you to acknowledge the reality that things have changed. We're offering you a future where the Ascendant Empire could still play a role in the galaxy, but only if you stop trying to control it all. If you seek a future where your people can survive and thrive, you must choose to embrace the new order, not fight against it." A long silence followed as the triumvirate exchanged looks, their expressions unreadable. Then, the unseen hand spoke, its voice deep and enigmatic. "You speak with conviction, human. And you have proven your worth. But peace cannot come without cost. Your kind will not rule the galaxy. That is a truth you must accept." Callus knew that this was the moment. She had to drive her point home. "We do not want to rule. But we will not be subjugated either. The galaxy has witnessed what humanity can do. We are not here to conquer, but to create something better, a galaxy where all species can coexist. Where the strong do not prey on the weak, and where power is not defined by fear but by cooperation. The war has to end. For the sake of the galaxy. The unseen hand, for the first time, seemed to hesitate. Its dark presence lingered in the room as it weighed Callus's words. Then, in a tone colder than ever, it spoke. You ask for too much. But perhaps we have reached the end of the road. There are forces at play that you do not understand, human. We have seen what your kind is capable of, and it is clear you are not so easily crushed. The triumvirate paused, and for a moment, the room seemed to vibrate with the tension of a galaxy at war. But then, finally, Duther spoke again, this time with a tone that betrayed something like grudging respect. Very well, Callus, he said slowly. You have earned your place. We will agree to a ceasefire, but only under terms that ensure the Ascendant Empire's continued survival and power. We will not bow to your demands for total peace. There will be no surrender. But if you can prove your strength and demonstrate that the galaxy can be ruled without complete subjugation, perhaps we will reconsider. It wasn't a full victory, but it was a start. Callus allowed herself a brief moment of triumph. We will prove it. And the galaxy will be better for it. As the negotiations concluded, the ceasefire was agreed upon, though temporary. Both sides had agreed to an uneasy truce, and the war that had torn the galaxy apart now stood at a crossroads. Humanity had not just survived, they had made their mark. They had shown the galaxy that no empire, no matter how powerful, could crush the indomitable spirit of those who refused to be ruled. Back on New Terra, humanity celebrated this hard-won peace. There was still much to be done, rebuilding, forging new alliances, and keeping the fragile peace intact, but for the first time in years, the future seemed bright. Humanity had fought against impossible odds, and now, they were beginning to chart a new course for the galaxy. The Underdogs had not only survived, they had changed the galaxy forever. And this was only the beginning. The stars no longer belonged to the empires of old. They belonged to those who dared to fight for a future of hope, equality, and freedom. The galaxy had just entered a new era, one that humanity would help shape with the fire of their resilience and the strength of their unity.